Corla. Just recently, the economist Dan O'Brien noted that the Irish economy has increased employment more in the past 4 years than in the 70 years from 1926 to 1996. It would be really sad if, as a people, we in Ireland failed to learn from the near-death experience of 8 years ago. And that's why I'm urging the parties in this chamber to really do the new politics and support the concrete set of proposals by the Labour Party to improve the lives of working people. Labour's motion, among other things, calls for increases to the national minimum wage until it is pegged at 60% of median earnings, for a living wage of €11.50 per hour to be adopted, particularly throughout the public sector. Further protections for vulnerable workers in precarious employment, and to bring to an end exploitative employment contracts that foster increased casualisation of workers, including, as was mentioned earlier, bogus self-employment. F. Scott Fitzgerald famously observed that the rich are different. We were cruelly reminded of this 1 year ago when the new owners of Cleary's maintained a zen-like silence while the workers were casually dispossessed of their livelihoods with minimum notice. This was predator capitalism working as social vandalism. And if there was a blot on the recent 1916 commemorations in O'Connell Street, it was the spectre of Cleary's famous building, shrouded and dead, a death created by a series of very clever corporate moves, both onshore and offshore, with hundreds of workers and concessionaires thrown out onto the street. In 2008, Ireland endured the worst economic crisis in the history of the state, the collapse of the banks and the collapse of the construction industry, and the loss of 330,000 jobs. It needed a big response, which Labour and government made, and now we see a dramatic growth and recovery in employment. Without a doubt, raising workers' wages and living standards is central to recovery, and that is what the Labour Party's motion tonight is about. We want everybody in Ireland who wants a job to have a job, but we want good pay and conditions. An early American president, Andrew Jackson, once said, "We should measure the health of our society not at its apex or top, but at its base." And as no less a body than the IMF has stated, if the income share of the top 20% in a country increases, then economic growth actually declines over the medium term. But by stark contrast, the IMF found that an increase in the income share of the bottom 20% will fuel higher growth. And this echoes similar findings by the OECD. So we think about it. As workers on 20 or 30,000, as was referenced earlier, if they get 2,000 to 3,000 extra a year, they'll spend most of it in the local economy. Whereas give somebody on 120,000 a year another 20,000, they may just save it. They don't need to spend it. And it underlines why tackling low pay, insecurity at work, and protecting vulnerable workers is really the most prudent, sensible form of economic management. In January, Luca Vicentini, the General Secretary of the European Trade Union Confederation, spoke in the IIEA on boosting economic growth and relaunching the social model here in Dublin. He referred to Ireland as a positive experience, and he said, "The European Trade Union Confederation recognise the Irish example has become a positive benchmark for all the countries in Europe, since here, trade unions and social partners have managed to restore the industrial relations minimum wage systems, and what was completely destroyed, by the Troika intervention in the past and in other countries. And we really appreciated what the Irish trade unions and social partners were able to do in the last couple of years. And we discuss a lot about this, the positive experience, because this could really be an example to other countries. New politics tonight is about supporting this motion. I want to call on the parties and the independents in this chamber to support progressive politics. It stands to reason that a wage-led recovery will increase confidence in Ireland and support the growth of small business, because people will have more money in their pockets to spend in their local shops and businesses right across the country and the regions. So far as the government amendment is concerned, I do welcome the commitment to at least review the application of the living wage within the public service and to encourage its adoption across the economy. We could, of course, go further, faster, and we'll keep a careful eye on what the government actually does to deliver on these commitments. But it's long past the time the government can simply and blankly repeat that it will at some stage respond to the University of Limerick study on zero and low hour contracts. Respond when and how? I want to ask the government, do you accept the report or don't you? And on the Cleary's issue, the government amendment reads as if the Cahill-Duffy report hadn't really been published weeks ago, or as if no one on that side of the House has read it yet. The Cleary's workers and other vulnerable employees are entitled by now to more than soothing, non-committal generalities. The most recent figures from the CSO show we're now at the lowest level of unemployment since the crash, at 7.8%. It's been halved from when Labour went into office in 2011 until we left office a few weeks ago. Youth unemployment is also halved, and employers are again recruiting young people from our universities and colleges and institutions right around the country. We want to make this a more attractive country to live in and a more prosperous society. So supporting this motion tonight is one of the key pieces in the jigsaw to building a better Ireland. Let me say as well, in relation to the trade unions with whom I worked closely all during my period as Minister, I was so delighted with the help of Kieran Mulvey and Unite to actually do justice by the Waterford Glass workers in getting their pension entitlements finally paid after years in the European courts. And that, in a city very depressed and still recovering, was an important injection of both cash and confidence into the local economy. I also want to thank SIP2 at a human level. You know, when Cleary's closed down, and by the way, I stood and sat in the Paris bakery with the workers in the Paris bakery and sorted out, by the way, their actual redundancy payments. Just so you know, I didn't look for any publicity on it. I did the same with Vita Cortex. We totally reformed the redundancy system, where people were waiting 2 to 4 years for their redundancy payments after the crash. And the system now actually ensures that people unfortunately made redundant, or worse still in the case of an insolvency, will get their money actually relatively quickly. And on that, can I specifically thank SIP2 and its general officers. When the Cleary's Cleary's closed down and threw people out, do you know, there wasn't even a place in which to meet the workers with some dignity to go through their social welfare entitlements and to get them their insolvency and redundancy payments. And remember, a lot of these workers, whom I know personally, had worked for 46 years in Cleary's. So this wasn't just their workplace, it was actually their family and their life. And I will never forget SIP2, people like Jack O'Connor, Jean Mealy, Joe Flynn, actually making offices available to the Department of Social Protection on one of the floors in SIP2 to allow people to go in dignity and privacy, to actually sort out their personal affairs in relation to their insolvency entitlement. Now,
thank you very much, Deputy. Your time has elapsed.
I know for a lot of right-on political people, stuff like that doesn't always matter. But to me it does, and it continues to matter, that always we treat people at work with the dignity as well as the entitlements to which they are legally entitled.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Deputy